I can always start speaking when people are around. I heard Jean-Marc Descharnais telling yesterday that in some places he just starts teaching the students even when no one is there. He has told that this speech starts then, and it's your problem if you miss it. Okay, I'm glad to be here in Mexico. This is my second time. Last November I spent 10 days in Mexico City, actually in the same hotel we were having here an ISO standardization meeting. And yeah, it's much easier for me to come here back. My topic here is new look at software product documents. Many presentations here have taught something about requirements and their connection to functional size measurement. My subtitle here is from P capital R D to capital P R capital D. And what I mean with this is that we have too long time in this industry paid too much attention to requirements and too little to document, and also too little to product. PRD stands for Product Requirements Document. It's very commonly known, but usually we only talk about requirements. And that has been leading so that there are some important requirements, and in the end of project they are already old. We probably compare the outcomes against the requirements, but we don't have real good documentation that should be done afterwards or whatever. It will never happen. So I'm not talking more about this from PRD to PRD. I took this from ISO vocabulary. ISO has wonderful vocabulary, a lot of different definitions. For any word you can try to find a definition from ISO website. And software is one interesting thing. When we are talking about software, many people understand it's something that the programmers do. But that's not true. By definition, in many ISO standards, I could find the definition which tells that software is all or part of the program's procedures, rules, and associated documentation of an information processing system. And I have seen in my many years career in software industry that poor or completely missing specifications, meaning the documentation, they are the most common reason for wasting time and money in software development projects. And also, poor and missing documents make software maintenance very slow, very expensive, and also vulnerable. If you don't have any good documentation, you probably fix wrong place, and you cause a lot of problems to somewhere else. So, and I have been measuring software size since 1987. That's 31 years already, and I'm still doing that very often. And I have seen that if we don't have documentation, it's very difficult or even impossible to measure the software size. So we need that. And for me, software size measurement is a very simple thing. In the middle here is the scope manager. I'm teaching scope managers and I'm acting as a scope manager. Currently I have 5 active customers, and from insurance and government sector mainly, but I have been working with many other business sectors as well. So scope manager is standing in the middle, and scope manager could be a professional software cost estimator that Harold was speaking about, or metrics, what was it, metrics expert, or what Diana had, what they are using in, or certified function point specialist. For all of those, it should be very easy if they have good set of product requirements documents, and then they have the size measurement method manual, which they by heart know. So then they can easily measure and tell that what is the size measured in this method. And this was my starting point probably a year ago, because I have been hearing so often that no, function points, it's a stupid metrics, it doesn't work. And when I go and check a little bit more that what's the question? Okay, we don't really know what we have developed, or we don't know what we should develop, because we have no documentation, no specifications. Then I understand it's not the functional size measurement method's fault that you can't measure, but it's the reason is the poor documentation. That happens so often, but always they say that no, function points is stupid. Okay, you can always use story points, because it's not based on any facts. So you can always say that, yeah, this is this many story points. So, and I think that all 5 ISO standard methods are very good. So I have been measuring some cosmic case studies, IFPAC case studies, and I have also been involved in many research where all the methods have been used. I have myself been using all the methods, and I think that it's waste of energy to compete against each other. All the methods are very good. In some documentation, one method may be easier to use than in another documentation, but you cannot say that, no, this method is stupid. Just the documentation is not adequate. So, who should read the product document? So I threw away the product requirements document after this. So, who should read product documents? Product owner is the person or a group of people making business decisions related to specification, which is the product document. Sponsor, the person who is paying and accepting business decisions, giving money to that development or maintenance. And they also need to see the connection from the estimates or from their payments to the business. And that's impossible without any documentation that what is done. Business analysts, it was the metrics analyst that Diana used. So business analysts, they are the authors and reviewers of the specifications. They write the documents. And then IT architects, they are very important people reading the product document, and they will support and guide the business analysts to improve the documentation, and also they can support product owner to make correct decisions with the architecture. Developer team members also need some documentation so that they know what they should program, and how they do the unit tests. They need a documentation to know that which kind of test they have to run. And they also read the documents and they review the specification. They ask questions, because no business analyst can write perfect specifications at first time. So, but if there are stupid programmers, they are just doing what is specified. good programmers are asking questions and reviewing the document and getting better input for their own job. Testers. Without any documentation, testers are quite lost because they don't know against what they should test things. And then end users. Good product document is very good marketing material explaining the end users that how they should use these in what kind of business cases and what are the important parts in one system just for them. So their training can be based on good product document. Then experienced end users are even more important audience. So they can actually read the document and say that, okay, but if this thing happened when I do this, then this system would be much better. So they are actually proposing improvements, proposing changes to the systems. And of course, they often do that together with the product owner or some business analyst. But anyways, they should also be, they should have acceptance or access to the documents so that they can check how is this supposed to work and why is it like this. Then scope managers, all these people, measurement experts who are supporting product owner and the sponsor, giving them information, all these metrics information that we have seen here. And then the maintainers, they are kind of developers, but they are working very stably and keeping the system and its environment working and up to date. They also need the documentation sometimes. So there are a lot of people reading these documents. Okay, if we think of product life cycle, when the documents are needed, of course, when we have the product is a software-intensive system, then there are many major use cases where it's necessary to have a good documentation. So when we are budgeting the system acquisition, we need to know that for whom and what are we going to acquire, what are we going to develop, and then base our budget on that. And then we are sending out requests for proposals. Usually there is some documentation attached with the request for proposal. So when we are sending out it, we need documentation. When someone is receiving a request for proposal, they want to see the documentation. So these kind of things. And then when we are starting the development project finally, when we are closing the project, we always need to check the quality of the documents. Are they ready? Can we pay all that we have agreed to pay already? Are the documents also good? Not only the software is, not only the programmed part, but also the other parts of software. And then when we are starting maintenance, it may be another organization than the developer organization. So the maintainer organization wants to see the documents and give their estimates how much they will charge annually. And then the other, when we are changing maintenance period, we are using that in Finland quite often, that we every year, in the end of the year, we check the size of the software for the budget for next year maintenance. And that's useful to have good documentation, what is done during the year. If that's completely lost, it's very difficult to improve the budget for next year. Then probably the system will be used 20 years, and there are many starts of enhancement projects. So those happen quite often, and also closing enhancement project, how much was done, and is the documentation still valid? That should be checked. And finally, after using 20 years the system, we have to start planning system replacement. And if we have good documentation, it will be quite easy to think this modernizing what Dan was talking about. So if we have documentation of the old system that will be replaced, then it's good to have documentation. Not only 2 Indian programmers who know what the system has. This is just a drawing of the product life cycle, and I put the same things there. So and number of people needed. So in the beginning, we need quite a lot of people, and when the maintenance starts, there are still the enhancements, and there are other things which are read in this figure. So the list that I had on the previous page, they are the major use cases for product document. But then there are also smaller use cases. So things like acceptance testing, we absolutely need the documentation. Then when someone is proposing change request, we need documentation. Someone is starting to implement a new feature. For example, in an agile project, they need some documentation. And when we are measuring the achieved productivity of a project or a sprint, and if we are changing developers or maintainers during that 20 years, I can guarantee that that happens sometimes. It's not that the people who originally developed the software, they will stay forever. We change people, and without documentation, it's very difficult to explain to new people that what is this system about? What is the overview? So, and then we have seen that there is impact. What documentation do we need? It depends how we are going to develop. And did I go? Yeah, okay. So nowadays, majority of the projects are agile in Finland. They are probably agile in Brazil as well, and in many other countries, in Mexico. And then the pricing system, how do you pay? We heard presentations yesterday, there are fixed price contracts, there are time and material based contracts, and there are also unit price per function point contracts. And when we make the combinations, agile, time and material based, that's probably the most common nowadays. Then we also have agile unit based, so we only pay how much is delivered. And they have given the price per function point. Then agile fixed price, which really, it's insane in my opinion, but still I have seen those. And then traditional time and material based, traditional unit based, traditional fixed price. So if we think about traditional fixed price project, we need all documentation before starting any development. But if we have agile time and material based project, we don't need all that documentation in advance, but we can improve the documentation, and we just need to know that, do we still have any money left? Can we still develop something? But these combinations are, or if we are going to buy package software, that is another case. But I have also seen that these packages are not really usable as they are. Okay, but those things we need to think, okay, what is in a good product document? We, in FISMA Scope Manager Forum, it's a group of a little bit less than 100 people who are all metric specialists and understanding these things. We have a lot of discussion that what should be in a good document so that the software can be developed. That's the most important thing there. But also that it's easier to measure things and so on. So we have these 7 chapters. We need an overview, and that includes different things. We need good specifications that who are the users of this target system. What kind of people they are, how many they are, and so on, how often they are going to use the system. Just such information. Then user stories. With user stories here, I don't mean the funny user stories that agile teams are using or developer teams are using, which very often have nothing to do with the user, and they are not really any stories. They are just structured sentences, and very often a user never has seen such a user story. They are something. I'm actually scope managing some agile projects, but the developers don't even show the so-called user stories, what they have written themselves. They don't show that outside. So these user stories are really telling positive stories, how a person is using this system to survive in her or his everyday work. And they are usually quite interesting to read and giving very good background to the developer team that what are we going to develop. And also they are very good for the testers and training people when they are doing user training. So such user stories. Then business processes need to be, so is this system going to communicate with other systems? And how and when are the users communicating with this system during their business? So business processes are an important part of that. Then use cases. Always when there is an arrow in business process between a user and a system, that is a potential use case, and it should be specified. Then we have data functions and service functions. So they are what IFPAC terminology says data functions and is it transactional functions. And if you want to challenge this structure, it's okay. So you can always say that we don't need overview chapter because everybody knows what this system is about, and forever everyone will know. So we don't specify any overview here. Or you can say that we don't need user stories in this case because they are so simple, use is so simple, or whatever. Or we don't need data functions here, we don't need any entity relationship model because our tools are so good that they generate the database model themselves. Just like that. So you can always challenge all of these. So, and then we have developed an easy tool, web-based tool that can be used to evaluate the goodness of a product document. And I have been using that. We developed that first in Finnish language, and I have translated it into English. Unfortunately, I updated my WordPress, and the safety and security was increased so much that nothing can be published. So that will take to next Monday when I get it published in the English version as well. But that happens, and I'm here. I just couldn't really do anything else. So we have collected 50 statements, and they are either true or false to all product documents. So if you have a product document, you take this tool and you go through the 50 statements and say that is this true, is this true, is this true. And they are 5 statements about overview, 4 about user groups, then 3 about user stories, 8 about business processes. They are all kind of best practices that should be applied when writing such documents. And then 7 about data functions and 15 about service functions. And when we go through all these 50 statements and tick them, and we get a kind of result about the goodness of our document, for example, 23 out of 50. And sometimes it will be good, and depending on which parts are perfect and which are not so perfect. When we are doing the early budgeting, we don't really, it's impossible if we are going to develop Agile that we would have 50 out of 50. But we don't need that. But this is just telling that is this quality applicable compared to our situation. So that's just an example. So about overview, we have this overview picture of the system exists. So a graphical illustration of the system showing that just, and then a verbal less than 2-page overview text exists, which is then kind of executive brief that business people can read that. And that can be used also during the development project and outsourcing maintenance and whenever, just 2-page overview text. Then technical environment of the system is defined. So which tools we need to use when we are updating or developing this and testing and other things. Is it Java, HTML, whatever that you need to use. And then the system structure and architecture, is this a client server or 3-tier app system or what is it? Applet in a mobile phone in Android. And then all responsible persons find the newest version. So this is very important, and in the end of every chapter we have this question. Because I was just reading that 1/3 of all people's work is going wasted because of they have to search the documents and they don't find, they have to rewrite some documents because they have lost the newest version and so on. So it's really important always that all responsible persons find the newest versions. There is no question that which is the newest, which is the current version. So that's in all of these. These are just examples. You can read the document, but such statements everywhere, and there is also mapping. You see here the business processes on the left side, and there are best practices that every user group can be found at least in one process chart. Because if a user group is nowhere, it's not a user group. It must be somehow involved to some business process. So such little best practices are collected here. And then when we go to use cases, statement 23 says that all use cases are easy to pinpoint in business process charts. So you go back to business process chart and you say, this is the use case which is part of this business process. So that is very important. So we go up and down. Same kind of idea is that there are data functions on the right side, service functions. And then statement 38 says that all implemented screens are easy to pinpoint in use cases. So those are important things. That you don't have screens that have nothing to do with any use case. And you don't have use cases which are not part of any business process. So that that statement series is just giving some kind of confidence, IT confidence of the system quality. So I'm also coming to my conclusions. I have 3 minutes left, so should be just in time. So when we think about this, the product document self-assessment, that with that kind of tool helps the product owner to improve specifications instantly. When you don't get enough points, you think that, okay, we can put this one working. We improve this document because this seems that we have forgotten this. And then also gives ideas for process improvement in requirement specification or documentation in long term. So it's just quite quick. If you see that in every product there are the same issues. And then a good product document allows effective development. We know that developers work much better when they have clear specifications to start. If they need to do some survey that what do you mean with this and who has said this stupid thing here, they cannot develop what they should do. It also allows reliable testing, effective user training, effective maintenance, and easy functional size measurement. So good document is a good thing. And through all above, a good product document helps the sponsors to save money and save time to market. They get faster delivery because of the documentation is at every point of the product life cycle, it's good. And then also improve quality. There were statements that the quality requirements are mapped against or each business process, its quality requirements have been told. So that's that kind of things. And then when we have made these recommendations, there are no documents written that are needed only for measurement purposes. And also that if you cannot measure functional size based on documents, no one can develop that software. So size measurement is much easier and lighter thing to do than developing the software and doing all the testing and others. So measurement is not, it's just a good test. That if you can measure, then someone probably can develop. And you can use Cosmic, you can use IFPAC, you can use NESMA, Mark II, FISMA methods, whatever. Yeah, thank you.